Hi, everyone. Good evening. Hope you guys are doing great. So welcome, welcome. I'm glad you are here. So let me know in the chat or give me a thumbs up or something. You can hear me okay. Um, and all of that. Hopefully I'm not talking to myself. Oh, okay, awesome. Thank you. Hi, Antoinette. And hi, everyone. Awesome. Thank you. All right, so we have more people coming in, so just wait a few more minutes and then we will get started. All right. Okay, so great. All right, so we'll just keep going and then as people join, we'll kind of get into the material a little shortly. All right, so great to have you here. Just wanted to first of all start by, sorry, excuse me. First of all, say welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm glad you came. And I've been where you are before, right? So a couple years ago, I too was trying to get my license, and then I had to take the class, prepare for the exam, yada 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 yada. So I definitely can relate. Now, like before we start, right? Just let me know in the chat, just either like a yes or no. So let me know in the chat, actually just a yes. If you are, what's it called now? If you are currently taking the class. Okay, so let me know right now if you're currently taking the class. So in the chat, just type like yes, if you're currently taking the class. Okay, final tomorrow. Okay. All right. Okay, then if you've already taken the class, let me know as well if you already took the class. Okay. Okay. Final on Thursday. Awesome. All right. Good. Okay, so we have a mix of people. People currently taking it, people who are just finished, already taking the class, already took it. Okay, awesome, awesome. Okay, so for those of you who are still taking it, right, there might be some things that you may not have covered yet, but still just, make notes so that when you cover it in class, it's just like a reinforcement. And then for those of you who have already taken the class, it would more or less be like a review session for you guys as we go along. So before we start, just a bit about myself. Some of you I may have had in class. Some of you I haven't, and we met some other kind of way. But my name is Nonye, and I'm a licensed broker. I've been licensed since 2016, so 6 years in May. And then currently I'm with EXP Realty. All right. And then initially I started with a Century 21 office in Chicago, and then I switched over in February. So I've just been, since February, I've been with EXP Realty. Now, sorry, give me 1 second. Someone said they're having a hard time joining the class. Did you guys have any difficulty?
The link didn't work for me. I had to put in the information.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. You mean like the Zoom link didn't work? Right?
Correct. Okay. Yeah, so I had to put in the meeting ID and the password.
Oh, okay. All right. So let me, oh boy, how do you even invite people to a meeting that's already in session? All right, I think I got it. All right, so let me copy this again. Did anyone else have that problem? I'm wondering where it's from. No, okay. All right. 1 second here. Sorry, guys. First time doing this stuff, like trying to do this, and I'm trying to stream it on Facebook on YouTube as well, so that it's available in the future. Anyone who wants to review it as later on. So, all right. Okay. Okay, so all right, let's keep going. Hopefully no one else is having that problem. All right. Next question for you guys. Where are you located? Are you in Chicago, suburbs, Northern Illinois, Southern Illinois? Just let me know in the chat. And one reason I do this is you may find someone in your area and you guys could probably partner up or something and study together. So let me know as well, South suburbs. And if you're even open with saying where, it might help for people who are looking to kind of partner. Okay. All right, so Joliet area. Actually, I was around there this morning. Whew. All right, awesome. Frankfort. My friend lives in Tinley, like right next to Frankfort. So sometimes I'm over that way too. All right, awesome. Good group. All right. So yeah, if you see someone who's close by, just send them a separate message, see if they're open to meeting. You may not be, and that's fine. Some people like it, some people don't, and that's okay. It's totally fine. All right. So I know you guys are probably at different schools, so your textbook might be different. Feel free to grab your book, grab something to write with, pen, pencil, whatever, and just have that so that when we're covering a specific topic, you can open that portion in your book and review that, okay? So what I will also do is if you have any specific questions, right, do you guys have like a Q&A or no? Is there a Q&A thing on here or no? If there is, send it that way. If there isn't, just put it in the chat. All right. Because I thought there was, but I don't see it, but that's okay. It might be in the webinar version of this. All right. So I am going to share my screen and we will go through it. If there are some specific questions that you guys have as you've been studying, maybe some topics that you covered in class and you're just not sure, feel free to bring them up and we can review it. That's not a problem. Okay. All right. So let me share my screen and then we will get started. All right, so do you guys see my screen? Okay, awesome. You see what it says, Illinois broker exam review. Okay, great, thank you. All right, so so today, first things I wanted to share about were, oh, sorry. So if you need, what I started doing recently was do YouTube videos, because when I was doing my class, and this was in 2016, I went on YouTube just to find resources, and there really wasn't anything. And then fast forward to last year, there still wasn't anything for Illinois brokers. And so that's why I started the channel. It's just been me doing all the stuff. So I haven't put as much videos out as I would like to, but more videos are coming. So I hope that, if you haven't been on there, I will definitely share this link at the end so that you can jump in and watch the videos. And then also let me know if there are other videos you want me to put up. And then also I created a Facebook group just so like some of my students or from different classes or anyone who is in the process of becoming a real estate broker in the Chicago area or even outside of the Chicago area really can join the group. And I mean, essentially, you guys can run that group in the sense that you throw out questions there and like people will answer. There are some experienced brokers in that group as well. And I wanted them there just so that, you know, you can get a different perspective. So it's not just me that's answering your questions. All right. So I will share these links with you guys at the end. And just if you haven't joined the group yet, just send a request and I'll add you to the group. All right. Then if you wanted to pay for additional resources, some of you know about Exam Smart, Prep Agent, PSI, which is PSI is the company that actually does our tests. So they also have a sample test that you can do. So these are the three main ones in the Illinois area. I know that some other states have like a Kaplan 1. I've never done that one, but it's not as common here. But these are the three main ones that are common in our Illinois market. And for Prep Agent, I have a 20% discount. So if anyone's interested, all right, so Isis says, I've been using Exam Smart. I actually used the free version of it when I took my exam, just because honestly, I'm that type of a person. I wouldn't pay for something if I can do it on my own. So I just took theirs and did the free stuff. And it was helpful. It was helpful. So if anyone wants to do that as well. And then Prep Agent, I used to watch his videos in 2016. So he only had YouTube videos at that point. But then now he also has a whole program. And I know they do webinars for people to join and things like that. So I had a student one time who was using Prep Agent and I got to see behind the scenes of like how it looks and the questions they ask and things like that. And honestly, it was hard. Like some of the questions were not very Illinois specific. So even some of them I was like, I'm not sure what that word means. But the good thing is this student passed the first time. So if there's any consolation, they passed the first time. And then, like I said, when I took mine, honestly, I was broke. Let's just be honest. I just couldn't spend the money. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't, I just tried to do as much as I could without paying anything extra. And then eventually, if I didn't pass, then I would have gone to pay for something. So I watched a lot of videos online, but most of them were not Illinois specific, but I just took what I could from them, right? So you guys just do whatever works best for you. For PSI, I have a former colleague. He's still licensed now, but we're no longer in the same office. He was the one that told me about PSI. And what he said with them is that because they're the ones who actually administer the questions, like the exam, he felt that their questions were the most, like the closest to the actual exam, right? And so he paid, so the difference between the $15 one and the $25 one is that with the 15, once you finish, they just give you the answers. With the 25, once you finish, they'll give you the answers and why it was correct or why it was wrong. So that's the difference in the $10. But you can only take the exam one time. So once you take it and submit your answers, then you're done. If you need to take it again, then you have to pay again. All right. But if you don't finish, you can always come back and finish. So let's say you stop at question 20, you can come back and finish up. But once you hit the last question, you submit your answers, then you can't take it again. All right. Okay, so let's go into the stuff that we're covering today. All right, let's start off with licensing laws. All right, so thing to remember, and you can open up the chapter in your book, right? Thing to remember the licensing law. So remember the name of the law for sure. all right? The Real Estate License Act of 2000, and then it was amended 2010 and then also 2019. So essentially how it is the law is kind of valid for 10 years. So every 10 years, they need to go back and make any amendments necessary, any necessary amendments, right? So the most recent amendment was August 9th of 2019. Okay. And it maybe RELA may help you remember, RELA. So the Real Estate License Act of 2000. Right. Next thing to remember, IDFPR, right? Know what it means and know what they do. So we have the Licensing Act. IDFPR is the one who administers essentially enforces the law, all right? So they make sure that we keep the law, and that's where we get our license from. That's where we renew our licenses. That's where, if you're ever disciplined, right, it will be through IDFPR. If your license is ever suspended or, you're fined for something, it will be through IDFPR. All right. You probably don't want to have anything to do with IDFPR, except for renewing your license, right? You don't want them calling you for anything. Also, if you're changing your address, IDFPR. Now, question for you guys, right? And type it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and talk. If you're changing your address, okay, what does the law say? How soon should you notify IDFPR if you're changing your address?
Is it 24 hours?
Yes, it is 24 hours. Okay. So if you're not sure of that, please make a note of it. Okay. Change of address for a business, for an individual, 24 hours once you're changing your address. Okay. All right. Who needs to be licensed? Now, in your book, there's a whole paragraph about who needs to be licensed, right? Main things to remember: if you're trying to buy, sell, or lease real estate for somebody else and you expect compensation, you need a license. Simple as that, right? Once you're doing it for someone else and you expect compensation, you need a license to do that. Okay. So it tells you like directly, indirectly, depending on the book you have, if you're doing it directly, indirectly through technology, through media, through this, through that, right? So there's this whole thing about it. Essentially, main thing is if you're doing it for somebody else, you need to be licensed, especially if you want to get paid. Right? So if they throw any questions at you and you're reading the question and this person is helping someone buy real estate and they're going to be compensated, your brain should be thinking, okay, this is a license. This person should be licensed. Okay. So if the question doesn't say they're licensed, now you're looking at the answers, right? Is this person doing something legal? And the answer should be no. All right. So even if they help that person successfully sell the house, they still violated the law. Right. And it shows you there on the screen, if a person violates the law, this first part where it says is a class A misdemeanor, and then any subsequent offense is a class 4 felony. That's new as of 2019. So they may ask that question. All right. So now it's class A and also class 4. Any future violations is a class 4 felony. So that's new. So they may ask you that question. All right. And then in addition to that, you will be fined maximum of $25,000 per offense. All right. So the maximum is 25 grand. And 25 grand is pretty much the maximum for any, what do you call it? Any offense, pretty much. Like that's the cap that you can be fined for pretty much any offense. Okay. And that's a good thing. Like some of these things, they keep them uniform across the board. So you only have to remember 25,000 as the maximum fine. All right. Now, before we go on to the next slide, let me ask you guys a few questions about that information. So you guys are in the process of getting your broker license. What are some requirements to getting your broker license? Let me know in the chat, or you can unmute and talk. So what are some requirements to getting?
That we have our pre-licensing class.
Okay. Right. How many hours is that?
75. 45, 15.
Say that again. You said 75, then what? Right, high school diploma, 18 or older. Yep. And then you have to do high school diploma or GED as well. So they will take a GED.
Pass the state mandated real estate exam.
Yep. Of course. Yep. You got to do that. And one thing that they sometimes, and it's in your books, right? So you have the 75 hours. And remember that you could do a self-study or like webinars, you can watch those, but then out of the 75, 15 must be like a live interactive session, right? So that's part of the law. So 60 hours can be in different formats, but 15 has to be in some sort of like instructor-led class. Then after you get your license, before your first renewal, how many hours do you need to complete at that point?
45.
45, right? Yep. Yep. And then if you were getting your license, is there a different license for commercial real estate brokers? Is there a different one for people who do like farmland? What would you say? It's kind of a trick question. No, no, right? It's the same license. So with our licenses, we can sell all types of real estate, okay? Commercial, agriculture, and all of that. And remember that it's the entry-level license, right? So this is the first one that you get. And then also, probably won't ask you this though, but attorneys are exempt from the course, but they still have to take the exam and pass it. All right. Yes.
And that's because attorneys take their own CE, correct?
Well, that's for CE, right? Because we have CEs later on. But because a lot of things are based on the law, so they assume that attorneys already have that knowledge from their law school. So that's the assumption. They already are educated. So they can just go ahead and take and pass the exam, which is not always true because well, my friend did it and she asked me for my book so she could study because, you know, you forget stuff. So, but I think that's why, because they have the knowledge. All right, there's a question here. It says, is it true if you're under Section 8, you can't practice real estate? No. I have never heard that before. Has anyone heard of that before? Because it's not in our licensing laws. So I've never, ever.
That'll be violating
I
one
think
of the
that would be
laws.
illegal. Yeah, that would be
That's what I'm thinking too, because I'm like, how? Because even with getting credit, that can be used against you, like getting a loan, that cannot be used against you. So I don't think it will be used against you to practice real estate. The other thing is, I know they ask for either a social security number or a tax ID number. So either one works in Illinois. So I don't think Section 8 would be a problem at all. Okay. Yeah, I think that would be discriminatory actually. All right. So this is our broker license, right? Then what's the name of the next license if we go up from there?
Managing broker.
The managing broker license. What's the age limit on that one? The minimum age. It used to be 21. It's not, it used to be 21. It's not 21 anymore. It's 20. Okay. So prior to 2019, you had to be 21 to get your broker license. So now they dropped this one to 20 as it shows on the screen, right? They dropped it to 18. They dropped the broker to 18, and you have to have been a broker for at least 2 years before you can become a managing broker. So it only made sense that they would drop it down to 20. Okay, so 20 is the minimum age. I know it seems so young, right? But hey, if you're a 20-year-old hustler, shoot, what should stop you, right? So that's a way to remember it as well. Yeah, exactly. 18 plus 2 is 20. Okay, so 18 to get your broker license, and then you wait 2 years, and then you'll be 20 by that point and get your manager broker license. All right, how many hours? 165. I put the breakdown in on the screen there. So 75 is the one you guys are taking or have taken. Then your 45 post, and then you also have 45 hours for the managing broker license. As I said that, let's go back here. Now, sometimes they may ask you this question, and it's kind of a trick question, but how many hours do you need to be a broker? The real answer is 120 hours. So 75 plus 45. Okay, so please make a note of that. Sometimes they may ask you that. So 75 plus 45, that's 120. And then here for the managing broker, it would then be plus another 45, so 165 hours. Right? You must be a broker for at least 2 of the last 3 years, and this gives you the right to manage an office. Okay, start your own brokerage and all of those things. I actually do have this license, but I don't manage an office. I just have it. So, question, this is also part of real estate license law. A person who has their managing broker license, okay, can they advertise that they are managing brokers? Yes or no? Okay, so I get a yes. All right, anyone else want to take a stab? It's maybe flip a coin or something. Yes or no? What would you say? All right, it's yes, right? It's yes. And why I bring that up is because it's new as well. So as of 2019, the answer is yes. Prior to 2019, the answer was no. Because a person with a managing broker license can manage an office. So they didn't have a way to distinguish between someone who was managing an office and someone who wasn't. And so they didn't allow anyone who wasn't managing an office to advertise themselves as a managing broker. And so the only people prior to August 9th of 2019 that could advertise as managing brokers were those who were actively managing an office. Okay. Now, as of 2019, they added what we call the DMB, the designated managing broker. And you should have that in your book now. All right, the DMB, designated managing broker. So now this designated managing broker is the one managing the office. So they will advertise as the designated managing broker. And then every other managing broker can advertise as a managing broker. Okay. All right, question, does it have to be their own office? No, 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 you can manage someone else's office. Yeah, you can manage someone else's office. Okay. All right, so remember the DMB, the designated managing broker, is the one who is actively managing the office. And in your book, in the brokerage chapter, they should have like all their duties, things that they should be doing for the office. The sponsoring broker appoints a designated and designates a managing broker. Yeah. So the sponsoring broker does that. If it's your own company, you could designate yourself. My old brokerage, the owner was also the sponsoring broker and also the managing broker. All right, but my current one, the owner is not. So they have someone that they appointed as the designated managing broker. All right, and you guys know, right, once you get your license, you have to work with an office, right, for at least the first 2 years. Well, until you become a managing broker and want to work for yourself, all right? But at least your first 2 years, you have to work for a sponsoring broker. And yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that in future, later on. All right, the residential leasing agent license. Now in 2019, they also added this word residential. Before it used to be leasing agent. So with the word added there, it lets you know that they can only lease residential real estate. Okay, so the word there, residential leasing agent, so residential only. All right, so 18 years of age, GED or high school diploma, 15-hour course instruction, and then they take an exam as well. And this last part was changed as well in 2019. So they can start working as the residential leasing agent, right? Before they get their license, but they have 120 days to get their license. If within that time, they haven't gotten their license, they need to stop. And the part they just added was this last part. They have to start within 60 days of the 120 days. Okay, so you have to start the class within 60 days of the 120 days. Okay, so this is a good way for people to kind of test and see, do I want to do this as a career or not, right? So you sign up with a sponsoring broker. One thing I did put on the slide there, we must, all right, keyword there is must. We must notify IDFPR of this arrangement. Okay, so once you start, you notify IDFPR, within 60 days, you start taking the class, and then you should be licensed in 120 days. So question in the chat, out of curiosity, if you've taken the course for your broker's license, can you take the leasing agent exam? That's a very good question, actually, because their curriculum is pretty much from ours. I would say no. I would say you have to take the class and all of that, because when you finish taking this class, right, your broker class, your school gives you a transcript that says you've taken the class. With that transcript, then you go take the exam. All right, so if you don't have that transcript, you can't even take the exam. Then with the leasing agent, it'll be the same thing. So they have to give you the transcript and then you take it. So I would say no. All right, but you can do what a residential leasing agent can do. So you don't need both licenses. Okay. The other thing with the DMV, anytime we appoint somebody, we also need to make sure that we notify IDFPR. Right? So a lot of things that we do, we need to make sure that IDFPR is aware, because IDFPR audits the brokerages, right? If they review your documents, they're like, who is this person signing off on things? They should have that person listed in their records as your designated managing broker. Okay. All right. Now, one other question I want to ask you is about designated managing brokers. If, let's say, I was hired as the designated managing broker for ABC Realty, and over the weekend, I just concluded, you know what, I'm done with this company. I don't want to work there anymore. So today is Monday. I just email everyone and say, hey, I quit. Sorry, I didn't give a 2-week notice, but I'm done. Okay. Question, can the office continue to function? Or does the office have to shut down because they no longer have a designated managing broker?
Can't they designate another managing broker?
Yes, they can. Okay, so they can keep going. They do they have to notify IDFPR? Yeah, obvious answer, yes, right? Yes. How long do they have to notify IDFPR? There's a time frame. No, IDFPR is actually more lenient. It's actually 15 days. So they have 15 days to notify IDFPR, okay, of the loss. They could, if they have someone who could just step into that role temporarily, they would tell them, hey, actually, they should have someone step into that role temporarily, and say, okay, this is the person for now, but we just want to let you know we're out of a managing broker and now we're trying to find one. Okay. And then, so 15 days to notify. And then IDFPR gives them a time frame as well to replace that person. Does anyone know that number? It's a number of days as well. All right, so it is 60 days. Okay. 60 days.
That's 60 days from the point that you reported that you didn't have,
No, from when you lost the person. So you notify, you lose the person, you have 15 days to notify them, and then IDFPR will give you an extension for 60 to find that person.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. If it's a situation where, let's say it was a sponsoring broker that was also the designated managing broker, and that person passed away, right? So if they have a will and maybe like they have an heir that can step in as managing their estate, right? So if they have someone like that, the person can kind of step in temporarily and kind of manage everything, notify IDFPR, keep running the office, and then begin to hire people for that role. Okay. Even if they're not, I was going to say, even if they're not licensed, I believe so. Let me just check real quick. If they're not licensed, then they have to appoint someone who is licensed. If they're licensed, then they can take on that role. Okay. All right. So going on to broker compensation. Remembering that you work for a sponsoring broker. Remember, you can only have one sponsoring broker at any time. You can't have more than one sponsoring broker. One other thing to remember with that is because you only have one sponsoring broker, you cannot host an open house for another office. So let's say your best friend is with a different brokerage and your best friend is like, hey, can you help me host an open house? In Illinois, the answer is no. Okay. In other states, you may be able to, but in Illinois, you cannot, because that will mean you're working for someone else's sponsoring broker. All right. So, question, who pays the broker? Who pays you? Like when you get your license, who's going to be paying you? Do you get
The
paid?
sponsoring broker.
Right, the sponsoring broker, right? So remembering that they're the only one that compensates the agent. And then the broker gets paid when, for example, through the seller or the buyer or both. It just depends on whatever is negotiated. Guys, remember that there is no standard anything, right? It could be a flat fee, it could be an hourly rate, it could be a percentage of the purchase price, it could be a combination of all three, whatever is negotiated. Please don't forget that, right? There is an antitrust violation. I don't know if anyone remembers what that is, but I'll say it if no one remembers. But there is an antitrust violation that says we cannot have standard or uniform commissions across the board. So even saying, oh, what's the going commission rate? What's the standard rate? Hey, there isn't any. It's always negotiable. Okay. And that violation is price fixing. So I'll just type it here in the chat, price fixing. Okay. And that's where we, from different brokerages, will come together and say, hey, this is what we're going to be charging people across the board. For example, Target and Walmart come together and they have a meeting and they say, going forward, our prices are going to be the same. What did you mean to put out to everyone? Really?
Price fixing, but it only went to one person.
Oh, okay. Okay. By the way, I like that book you're reading, Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice. Is it the Napoleon Hill one, but like a different version of it?
Yes, there's so many different versions of that book, but yes, it is.
Okay. Well, I'm actually reading that book again. I restarted reading it again.
I read it several times. You'll get something new from it each time.
Yeah. All right. I'll type in the chart. Think and Grow Rich. Think and Grow Rich. It was written in the 1920s or 30s, but it's still very relevant today because the principles are still the same. All right. So price fixing. So yeah. And the way I'm saying this is like, if you get any type of questions on the exam and they're talking about, you know, having a standard, once you see the word standard, right, your brain should be like, this is probably not right. Okay. Now, Walmart, Target come together and say, going forward, we're going to keep all our prices the same. What does that do for you as a consumer? That means there's no option, right? You have to pay, for example, $5 for a loaf of bread, because that's what everyone is charging for a loaf of bread today, right? But if there is some wiggle room, right, we as consumers have options and we can shop around for what works best for us, all right? So same thing with broker commissions. It's always negotiable. If you're at a listing appointment or something and someone's like, well, what's the general rate? Like, I don't know what other people charge, but this is what we charge. And that's how you just put it to them. Okay. However, right, your office, if you notice, this is a singular word. All right, this is singular. And this is plural, right? This is plural as well. So that's another thing too, when they give you some options and ask you what someone shouldn't be doing in terms of price fixing, you're looking for singular. So an individual or a brokerage can do one thing, whatever they want to do for their own brokerage. But when it becomes brokers are doing this, right? Sponsoring brokers or brokerages are doing this, or companies are coming together to do this, then you're wondering, is this price fixing or not? Okay. Then here too, for the exam, the sponsoring broker is the only one who can pay a commission. Actually, the sponsoring broker is the only one who can receive a commission, right? And then it's illegal for that sponsoring broker to pay commission to anyone who's not in their office. So if you don't work for ABC Realty should not be giving you a commission check. What will happen instead is ABC Realty will cut the check to your office, and then your office will pay you. Right? That's what usually happens for rentals and things and stuff like that. Right? For sales, the check usually is cut by the title company at closing, so the money is just dispersed there, so you don't have to do it, but this is the general way it will go. Now, question, there is only one time, right? There's only one time that someone who is not your sponsoring broker can pay you. Does anyone remember? Janae, I think your hand is raised. Go ahead.
When you have I forgot the word, but it's like when you have hang deals out in the air. You know what I'm talking about, but I keep forgetting the word.
When if you were previously employed by them and you have
Yes.
a
deal
that hasn't closed yet.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the only time they can pay you. So it actually happened to me in February when I switched brokerages, right? That was the only time I was paid by something with an H. That's the only time I was paid by the previous sponsoring broker. Okay. Now again, for the exam, you know, there's that, you know, you work for your sponsoring broker. You make the money, your sponsoring broker takes a little bit of it and gives you the rest of it, right? Is there a standard that we can, standard commission rate for, commission split with your office, right? We just talked about standards. So you guys should know the answer to that question. Is there a standard commission split between broker and sponsoring broker? No, right? It is always what negotiated. And that's done in your employment agreement. Okay. It's done in your, I thought I had that on the slide, but I'm saying it here. So the mutual agreement is your employment agreement. And that employment agreement for the exam, it must be in writing. Okay, that's one of the documents that must be in writing. Okay, so whatever your agreement is, must be in writing. And that's your employment agreement. It will state that you are either an independent contractor, or if you are an employee, they would state it on there as well. Right, so they have to distinguish which one you are. Right? And I'm sure you guys know this, but some offices do like a split. Some people do 100%, but then there are fees. Some people have a little bit of both. Again, just pick the one that works best for you. When I first started, I went to a brokerage where there were no fees, but now I'm in one where there are fees. However, at the end of the day, the split was very similar, but at the end of the day, I get to take home more from my check than I did before. So there's so many fees and things that you have to pay for different things and blah, blah, blah. So just read all the fine print. The other reason I picked my old office actually was because of location. So then we weren't as virtual as we are today, of course, right? So that was one thing that I considered. So factor in your life and see what makes sense for you when you're choosing a brokerage. But also remember, you can always leave. So don't feel like I have to make this massive decision that's going to change my life forever. You can always switch. Okay. I know it's a big like burden sometimes to pick the right one, but it's not that big a deal. All right. Oh, but sorry. As a disclaimer, some offices make you pay an annual fee. So because of that fee, you may feel like I need to stay till my fee is up and then I can leave. So that's why some people don't leave right away. But if you don't care, then you just leave. Here, as a licensee, the law allows you to create a business entity. It doesn't have to be a corporation only. So sorry, this should actually say business entity. Right, so you can create your own solely owned business entity, and that's for receiving commissions, right? So instead of receiving the commissions in your name, you can receive it in your business name, and then you pay yourself from there. What if you're married? You can own it with your spouse, right? However, if your spouse is licensed, your spouse must also be with your sponsoring broker, right? So that little part there was new as of 2019. So you can have a business entity, you own it by yourself. If you're married, you can own it with your spouse. If your spouse is not licensed, then they're fine. If your spouse is licensed, then they must be with your sponsoring broker, which is kind of how it happens anyway. I haven't met any couple who were in different offices because you have to work together. So it makes sense to be in the same office. All right. So know that for yourself, and something you could do too for yourself. No one without a license should be paid a referral or lead fee. That's one of the reasons why you need to get a license. So if you're ever, getting referrals and things like that, can you give your clients gifts? Yes. So you can pay people who are part of the transaction, but if anyone is not part of the transaction, then they don't get anything. They could get a thank you. All right. There's some loopholes around it that people still like say thank you to people who send them referrals, but consult an attorney for those type of things. Or actually, Illinois Realtors also has a resident attorney that we send questions to if we wanted to know what we could or couldn't do. So those type of things you can ask them. All right, but for the exam, the answer is no. Okay. Commissions and disclosures. We always, always, always disclose any ownership interest we have in the property or in services. So to our clients, we must disclose how we're making money when they do something. For example, if I own an inspection company, right? Of course, they're going to be on the list of inspectors I recommend to my clients. But if my client is going to use them, I need to let my client know, hey, just so you know, I own this inspection company, so I will indirectly get paid if you work with them. All right. I mean, that's fair enough, right? And then when you work with clients, you also display your sources of compensation. For example, if you're working with a buyer and you're getting paid from the buyer and the seller, you disclose it to your clients. Okay, you're not doing anything illegal, but you must disclose that information. Now, one question that I saw in the book, it talked about if you're getting compensated by the buyer, you're also getting compensated by the seller, right? And you're getting a bonus from the seller, all right? And now your buyer is upset because you're making all this money from their transaction. And they're wondering if you would cut back on what they're supposed to pay you. Now, the answer to that particular one the particular question was talk to your sponsoring broker, all right? It's because remember, the brokerage agreement is not between you and them, it's between the sponsoring broker and them. So it's a sponsoring broker ultimately that makes that decision, all right? So you talk to your sponsoring broker about it, but you're not doing anything illegal. Sponsoring broker says, well, tough luck, right? Because that buyer chose that house and it just so happened that the seller was paying a bonus. So it was your lucky day, right? All right, now let's transition to brokerage agreements. All right, so I just mentioned it. The brokerage agreement is between the broker, the sponsoring broker, and the client. Okay, always don't forget that it's between the sponsoring broker and the client. I don't know if you guys have seen the forms that we use, but your name is only in one spot. You don't even sign the form. It's all the sponsoring broker's responsibility to sign it. Or it could be the designated managing broker, just depends on your office, right? That being said, if you get a question where they ask you, Tony, all right, so Tony is the managing broker, all right, a sponsoring broker. Tony's a sponsoring broker. Jane is the agent working with the seller, all right? Jane is in a car accident and now she's in a coma. What happens to the agreement now that Jane can no longer work? Question is nothing, because remember, the agreement was with the sponsoring broker and not with Jane. So if the agent dies or becomes incapacitated, it doesn't affect the brokerage agreement. All right. And when I say that in my class, I always tell my students, just because of that, know that you are replaceable. So don't kill yourself for any agent, for any clients, okay? Because you are replaceable, right? So just take care of yourself and don't kill yourself for anybody. All right. Brokerage agreements. We have listing agreements with the seller and buyer agency agreements with the buyer. Now, my question for you guys, can anyone list, or you guys can throw it in there, the types of listing agreements that we have in Illinois? So what are the main ones that we use? Does anyone remember the brokerage agreements?
Implied agency.
No.
Well, exclusive agency listing.
Exclusive, right? Exclusive agency listing agreement, right? Exclusive right to sell. All right. Then
Open listing.
right, there's an open one, and then there's the net listing.
Net
as
listing.
well, right? So, and then on the buyer side, we have exclusive buyer agency, exclusive agency, buyer agency. This one is also known as the exclusive right to represent, exclusive buyer agency. Yeah, go ahead, Jania.
And dual agency, but it must be in writing though.
No, dual agency is not a type of listing agreement.
Okay,
Yeah, it's a
okay.
type of agency, but it's not a type of listing agreement, right? So for listing agreements, it's the employment contract that we have with the sponsoring broker and the seller. All right, that's your listing agreement. And then your buyer agency agreement is the sponsoring broker and the buyer. Now, these are the four main ones these are the four ones that we have in Illinois. So exclusive, open, and then net. And then on the buyer side, these are the three that we have. Now, according to the law, all right, some of these must be in writing. Does anyone remember which ones need to be in writing according to the law? Right, the exclusives, yep. Okay, so the first two, all exclusives must be in writing, yep. Please don't forget that. Okay. So exclusive right to sell, does anyone know what that one, what you remember that one by? Like what's the main points for the exclusive right to sell? The agent gets paid regardless of who sells the property. Exactly. Right. The agent gets paid regardless of who sells the property. All right. And then it's parallel to this one. So on the buyer side, exclusive buyer agency agreement, the agent gets paid regardless of who finds the property. So the buyer finds a for sale by owner, and the for sale by owner doesn't want to pay the agent, the buyer would pay the agent. So even if someone else sells the property, agent still gets compensated, yes. Okay, that's the exclusive right to sell. So let's say your seller puts the property on the market. You have the exclusive right to sell listing agreement with them. Now the property is on the market. Their cousin comes and is like, oh, I didn't know you were selling. I always wanted to buy your house. What can the seller do? Nothing. The seller would then tell their cousin to talk to you, or they can work it out, whatever, but you still get paid, even if it's their cousin that buys the house. Right? That's the exclusive right to sell. Now, the exclusive agency, that same scenario, they could sell to their cousin, and then the agent will not get compensated. Okay. Now, one other thing with exclusive is the seller is only working with one agent. That's what that exclusive means. So you're exclusively working with this agent. The seller is exclusively working with this agent. Right? So exclusive agency listing agreement, the seller is exclusively working with this particular sponsoring broker, the broker, everyone from that office, right? But the seller reserves the right to only compensate the broker if they're the ones who bring the buyer. Okay. Then open listing, it's not exclusive. So it's open to whoever, and the seller will compensate whoever brings a buyer. Net listings, does anyone know what that one is?
It's based on the net price for which the property will be sold. I'm not mistaken.
Right. So the seller in their head, they want to walk away from that transaction with an amount of money. So, so whatever above and beyond that amount is what the agent will get as a compensation. All right. So if the seller wants to walk away with 102, for example, or let's just say 100, they want to walk away with 100. The property sells and the money that they cash out is 102. So that's $2,000 over the 100. That's what the agent will get compensated. If it's 100,000, that also means that the agent gets 0. Okay. So whatever is above the cap, yeah. So if there's nothing above, then you get nothing. Jania, do you have a question?
I got a statement, and it's also frowned upon
Yeah.
because like there's room for fraud.
Right.
Correct.
Right. So your question there, would you consider net listing could be used unethically? Yes. Right? Because maybe I know the seller could get more, but I won't tell them that because that will reduce my commission. Right? So it is legal in Illinois, but it's frowned upon. I've never actually seen it happen. My current brokerage, I actually do not know if we allow net listings, but I know my old one did not. But I only knew because it was in the conversation. But in my new one, I didn't read all the paperwork, so I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not gonna lie. All right. So please know the four of them. And if they throw it to you in a scenario type situation, right, you should be able to identify them. So for example, if there's a seller's house and there are multiple for sale signs from different brokerages on the yard that say, you know, for sale, call me, for sale, call me, that's probably an open listing, right? Because it's open to so many brokerages, and whoever brings the buyer is the one who gets compensated. All right. Jania, go for it.
I forgot to put my hand down.
Oh, okay. No problem. All right, agency relationships. So this defines the relationship that we have with our clients. It could be either express or implied. Does anyone know what these mean? Or like a simple way of saying them, like express or implied?
Written or just communicated?
Okay, which one would that be, express or implied?
Express would be the one that's written,
Mm.
and implied it would be the one that would be not written. It's just an implied relationship.
Okay, so
nothing in writing.
Okay, so express can also be oral. So think of like the action of expressing. So I'm expressing something to you. So I could either say it or I could write it down. Okay, so express is both written or oral. Now implied is through your actions. All right, so with implied, think about you walk into a grocery store. All right, how many of you have like self-checkout now, even at Walmart? Even the Aldi down the road from me has self-checkout. I'm like, really? So somehow they just employed all of us and they didn't even ask if we wanted to be hired. Now we're all cashiers, right? So anyway, you walk into the store. You don't talk to anyone. You have your headphones in your AirPods, whatever. You know, you're not talking to anyone. You walk in, you grab an item off the shelf. It's implied you're going to pay. So that's an implied relationship. So you don't even have to tell anyone anything because you can't just walk out of the store with that item without paying. If you walk out, that's, you know, theft. So the action of picking up the item is an implied agreement and you're going to pay. So that that item, you go to self-checkout, you don't talk to anyone, you swipe your card, you pay, and you walk away. So that's an example of an implied agreement. In the comments, applied is sitting down at a restaurant, getting waited on, and it's implied you're going to pay. Exactly. All right. Same with real estate. You meet with someone and they're telling you, oh, I really want to buy a house. And they start telling you about all this stuff, right? So you're like, wait, I actually have a house that will work for you. And like, really? Can you show it to me? Sure, I'll show it to you. When are you available? You guys agree. Now you go show them the house. They're like, oh, I really love it. I want to make an offer. Sure, I'll write the offer for you. Now we've never talked about, oh, you're my agent or I'm your agent or we haven't said any of that stuff, but our actions are showing that we're creating an agency relationship. Okay. All right, so we already talked about brokerage agreement. It could be written or oral, right? So the oral one was like the open agreement could be oral. Net could also be oral. It's best, of course, to have it in writing, but it could be oral. And then our compensation, which is valuable consideration. Do you guys remember contracts and how a contract must have consideration? So something of value that's being exchanged for the services or the goods that are being provided. All right, on the next slide, if I jump to it, consumer, customer, client. Consumer, customer, client. Does anyone know how you differentiate those three from each other? Like who's a client, for example?
Buyer or seller.
Right? But more like someone who has hired you to represent them. Right? Because a buyer could be unrepresented. Client is a principal in an agreement too. Client and also principal are the same, right? But think of the person who you're working for, the person you're representing. Because the buyer and seller could be unrepresented. They could be a customer. A customer or a consumer, actually. Now, a consumer is someone who's seeking information. All right. And also receiving licensed activities. They can eventually become your client. So, for example, you're hosting an open house. Someone walks in, right? Someone walks in and they are a consumer at that point. Okay? They really love the house. Then you ask them, hey, are you working with an agent? They say no. Then you're like, well, if you need an agent, I can represent you. Then you guys have that conversation. Now they become your client. All right, in the chat says the buyer is the customer to the listing agent and the seller is a customer to the buyer. Yes, yeah. So that's someone you're working with in a transaction. So you don't work for them, you don't represent them. But you may perform some services to them. Yep. All right, and then the client is the person that you represent. So essentially you work for the client and then you work with the customer. Okay, and here the other agent's principle is what Justine put in the chat there. All right, fiduciary responsibilities. There are 6 of them. Does anyone remember what they are? Maybe you remember the acronym for the 6 fiduciary duties that we owe to our clients. All right, Code AC. Okay. So the first C is
Care.
care, and then
Obedience.
Mhm.
Loyalty.
right,
Disclosure.
Mhm.
Accounting. And confidentiality.
Confidentiality. Awesome. All right. So if you don't know these, please remember them. All right. For care, all right, our clients are looking to us as the expert. So they expect that you have certain, knowledge. And if you're working with a buyer, right, the care you provide will be different than if you're working with a seller. So with the buyer, you figure out what they need, what type of house they're looking for. You help them, search for the house, go see the property, make an offer, all of those things. For the seller, you're helping them come up with a price. You're presenting the home in its best form, right? Getting someone to take good pictures, telling them maybe to declutter, all of those things. And then when people come to see the property, you guys figure out a schedule and all of that. Once offers come in, you present the offers, all of those things. Jania, you have a question?
No, I keep forgetting to put my.
Oh, okay. All right, so that's care. Now, obedience, right? You guys know what the word means. So essentially, you pretty much obey anything your client says as long as it's not illegal or unethical. All right. So that could be things like, for example, the seller wants you to list the property for $30,000 more than it's worth. What should you do? if you're gonna take that listing, you list the property for $30,000 over the value that you think it has. Okay, you may have a conversation with them and you guys come up with maybe a plan to reduce the price or something, but as long as it's not illegal, it's not unethical, you obey all their instructions. All right, loyalty, their interests are above yours. So even if it means you're making less money, right, you go with that, with the client's best interest. All right. Other things like when you're working with a seller, for example, you don't want to put your seller in a compromising situation where people feel like, oh, the seller is desperate to sell, right? Or just doing things that are not showing that you're loyal to this person. You're more loyal to the buyer, for example, than to the seller. So those things you shouldn't be doing. And then disclosure, remembering that we tell our clients everything we feel they need to know for the actual transaction. Okay. And so if we fail to disclose the things that by law we're required to disclose, then we could be held liable. All right, so accounting, if you are holding on to clients' funds, you need to make sure you're keeping good records. Also, we may have the keys to clients' homes. We need to make sure those are kept confidential as well, or rather safe. So we have to account for whatever we're holding on to. Documents as well. So yeah, we're going to talk about the escrow accounts next. First question I wanted to ask you guys. So when you have signed contracts, right, you have a buyer or a seller, and we have a purchase agreement that's been signed. How long do you have to get your client a copy of that contract? The other one, not the next business day. So 24 hours, not the next business day. So for documents is 24 hours. Okay. For money, it's next business day. Because think about it, the bank isn't open. Okay, so for documents, 24 hours. Thankfully, now everything's electronic. All you have to do is forward it to your client. That's like 20 seconds, right? And then all funds that need to be deposited in the escrow account must be done next business day after the contract is signed or the lease is signed. Okay. And since this escrow account is separate and special, so if you see escrow, that just means it's separate. So it's different from yours. What's the term if you mix funds together with yours? So you mix your
Commingling.
Yeah. Commingling, right? So you mix your funds with your client's funds. And then what's the term if you actually use your client's funds? Conversion, right? And then final question, how long do we keep records in real estate?
$5 years.
Yeah. No, you were right the first time. I says it's 5. Okay. And the good thing is pretty much all records. So our escrow records are 5 years, appraisal records are 5 years, transaction records are 5 years. So all you got to remember is 5 years. Okay. Now, if you have a physical location and you have like paper, right, you must keep the first 2 years in your office location, your place of business. And then the remaining 3 could be in a storage facility. So we're in 2022 right now. So everything from 2020 should be in our office if it was paper. And then the rest from 2019 can be in a storage facility, for example. Okay. All right, so this is all accounting. And then the final one is confidentiality. All right. So with this one, this is the only fiduciary duty that lasts even after our relationship with our clients ends. So after you finish working with the buyer or the seller, you still keep confidential information confidential, right? So these are things that your client either tells you are confidential, or if you share them, they could diminish your client's negotiating power. For example, telling people that, oh, your client will take $20,000 less or $10,000 less than the listing price, just so you can get it sold, right? That would just be giving out confidential information, right? Now, you can disclose confidential information if you're given permission to do so, or if the law requires that you release that information. So for example, there are what we know as material facts about real estate. For example, let's say that there's water leaking in the basement, and then the seller says, please don't tell anybody, right? That we cannot keep confidential because the law requires that we let people know if the property has issues. Right, so that's one of the things that we must disclose. Okay, now let me ask you guys this question, and I'll give you two options. So let's say your client tells you there's nothing wrong with the home, right? And you too, you've been to the house, you didn't see any issues. Now, one day you're showing it to a buyer, and it just rained, like we had a thunderstorm the night before. So you're going with the buyer, and then in the basement, you see a pool of water that kind of seeped in one corner by the wall. All right. You tell the seller about it. Now, what can you do after that? Two options. You disclose the information to any other potential buyer, or you only disclose it to potential buyers that ask you if there are any issues with the basement. So, right. So in the chat, disclose to everyone even before they ask you, right? So by law, we're required to disclose to any potential buyer. Okay. So please don't forget that as well. And of course, you guys know about the residential property disclosure form, right? That one is required by law for the seller. All right. The seller fills it out. You do not fill it out for your clients. Okay. All right. At 8 o'clock, I actually have a Jeopardy game, so we're going to play that at 8 o'clock, and maybe that will take us till 8:30. All right, a couple more things. All right, let me jump to this real quick. Everyone good with this that I have on the screen here? Like, you're able to tell like tenants in common versus joint tenancy if they ask you certain types of questions about them, and then you also know tenants by the entirety. So you're able to differentiate between all three. Should I go over it? Actually, let me just put this on here. Okay. So this is one for sure to remember. So for example, they could tell you maybe John and Mary own real estate with the right of survivorship. Okay. John dies with a will that says how his assets should be distributed. Now that John is dead, who owns the property? Okay. Now, because they had the right of survivorship, Mary now owns the property. Okay, so regardless of if the other person had a will or not, we don't care. And then this one is essentially joint tenancy, but for married people. Right. Governmental powers. Pete, police power, eminent domain, taxation, and escheat. What is eminent domain?
The right
It's
of
the
the
right.
Actually, who was speaking? Just raise your hand and I'll call on you. because there were two people talking together. Okay, when the government takes property and pays the owner, right? So eminent domain is the rights the government has to do that. Yeah, so Danielle, the rights of the government to take private property for public use, right? And then what you said, Isis, is like the owner must be fairly compensated. Okay, so the right is eminent domain, and then condemnation is the actual process. So when they're actually taking your house has been condemned, or that's the process of condemnation. All right. How about this word, escheatment? Jania, go for it.
It's the process whereby the county acquires real property of a person that has no heirs,
Right. So,
with or without heirs.
no, without. So this is where the property goes to the county if the person dies with no will and no heirs. Okay, so a person passes away, they have no will and intestate. So I use this word here. Intestate means no heirs. Please note that word. Intestate. Sorry, no will. Sorry, no will. So a person dies, no will, no heirs. The property escheats or goes back to the county where that property is located. Right. So it just prevents the home from just sitting vacant and just becoming a nuisance on the street. So the county gets ownership and then they could sell it or whatever. All right, easements. What's an easement? From this right here. So essentially the right to use someone else's property for a specific reason. Okay, so you're not using your own property, you're using someone else's property for a specific reason. So for example, an appertenant easement, it's when you're using your neighbor's property. So in this instance, right, lot A needs to get to the main road, the public road. So they use lot B to get to the road. And then in this instance, to get to the lake, sorry, my line wasn't straight. To get to the lake, they would then use this path and go into B's to lot A, right, to get to the lake. So using someone else's property for a specific reason. Easement in gross. Right, lot A is dominant. For which of them though? Because they're both using each other's land. So for which one is lot A dominant, Isis? Let's call this A and let's call this B. So which one is lot A dominant for? A or B? Okay, so let me erase all this stuff. All right, so when you're using someone else's land, think of it, you're dominating them. All right, so in this scenario, A is dominant and B is being used, B is serving. So B is the servient here. Okay, now in this one, B is walking into A. So B is using A. So B is dominating, right? Dominating A. And then A is serving here. All right, so that's why I asked you for which of the easements, because each one is a different, it's an opposite direction. All right, so you want to see which way the easement is going, and that would tell you who's the dominant and who's the servient tenement in that situation. Easement by prescription. Does anyone remember what that one is?
It's used for a period of time, as prescribed by the state law.
Okay, so you're using someone's property for a period of time, kind of like trespassing, right? But then you've been doing it for a while, and now you've created the rights to do it, right? So you don't own their property, but you've been using it for a while without interruption, right? So how long is it for Illinois?
20 years.
20 years.
It's a long time, right? So hopefully someone checks on their property in 20 years and stops any easements by prescription from happening, right? So that's where so this natural here in the chat, it's where it's notorious, it's adverse, it is continuous, it is hostile, and it is open. All right, so that's what those four mean. So notorious, adverse, continuous, hostile, and open. So you're continuously doing it in open, and then you create the prescription by easement. Easement by prescription. All right, let's talk about, actually, I wanted us to do some math stuff. Okay, I was going to talk about fair housing, but I'll just do it real quick here. So know the fair housing protected classes on the federal level and state level. In your book too, they'll kind of give you the time frame that they happened. Please know them as well. All right, the years that these were enacted. All right. So race, color, religion, national origin, sex, handicap or disability, and then familial status. This here, realtors can now really sell housing fast. That was one that one of my instructors gave us when I took my exam a while ago. So if that helps you remember, great. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. All right. And then the act also prohibits us from discriminating against individuals because they associate with people in a protected class. Right? So these are the federal. And then also be aware of blockbusting, steering, redlining. So steering, think about your car, right? So your steering wheel, you're turning it either one way or the other. So same thing with your buyers. You shouldn't be channeling them to a specific neighborhood or away from a specific neighborhood because of one of the protected classes, right? The buyer should be able to choose, or the tenant should be able to choose where they want to live. And with blockbusting, this is where you're telling people to leave a community because members of a protected class are moving into that area. And because of those people, the values are going to drop. And then redlining was essentially, blockbusting associated with someone busting on your door about something. Yep, that's a good way to remember it. All right, and then they're trying to like put this urgency in you. So yeah, like that banging on your door, right? That makes sense. And then redlining, this is where they're refusing to make loans or give insurance policies to people because they're in certain areas. Now this on the screen here is an old map of Chicago, and the parts in red were some of the areas that were redlined then. And so if you lived in these areas, they'll either make it so difficult for you to get a loan or they won't even approve it for you. All right, same with insurance policies. And so it kind of kept some of these areas, like values of homes in those areas, like undeveloped and like the poverty levels and things like that, because people were not able to own real estate and that way improve their community and make it a better place for everybody. All right, so Illinois Human Rights Act. So we have the federal plus these other additional ones. Okay. So remember those. And for us as real estate agents, it's our duty to make sure that every transaction that we are a part of is free from discrimination. So people should be able to, regardless of their race, color, national origin, sexual orientation, age, marital status, military status, all of those things, right? If someone has an order of protection against somebody else, right, that shouldn't be used against them when they're trying to get a rental apartment, for example. Okay. And then even with getting credit, right, these things should not be used against any individual. And then so a few things with math, right? Understanding how to calculate the area of rectangles and triangles. Because you may get something that looks like this, right? And this is the land. And the question is, how many square feet of tillable land do we have? All right, so you're looking at this and you're saying to yourself, okay, this is a swamp, so this is not tillable. But you need to figure out how to calculate this. And then you subtract the swamp from the total. Does anyone remember the conversion of 1 acre to square feet? Do you remember that square feet? Does anyone remember? One acre to square feet.
43,560.
Yep, you are correct. If no one has told you yet, there is a way to remember it. Sorry, I'm trying to, okay, good, I can do it here. So your 4, 3, that's 7, and then 5, 6, that's 11. Just don't forget that 0 at the end, right? My teacher said to remember it by 4 old ladies going 35 in a 60. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. This was how I learned it. So 4 plus 3 is 7, and then 5 plus 6 is 11. Then just don't forget that 0 at the end. But yeah, I actually like that 4 old ladies going 35 in a 60. Okay. I will have to use that. Nice. Yeah. All right. So for this particular one, right, if we were going to, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't copy over the right drawing. So with this, what I did was I drew a line here and then I drew a line here as well. So I found the area of, this is A, this is B, and this is C. All right, so C is my triangle. So if you notice here, it's half of the base times the height. Then you add all these 3 up, you get this number. I found the the size of the swamp in square feet and subtracted that number from our total. Okay. So if you get something like this is what you would do. Another way that they may ask you a question like this one, and if you get something like this, it'll just be 1 on the exam, right? So the other way they may ask this is they may give you an outline of a house and then ask you to figure out the square footage that's livable. Okay, so there might be a deck there. The deck isn't livable, so you wouldn't add the deck. There might be a garage. The garage is not livable, so you wouldn't add the garage. A balcony, those types of things, you wouldn't add them, right? So you would figure out the house, and you may have to divide it up, kind of like I did down the screen, just to get like the squares and the rectangles. And you would just do those individually, add them all up. All right. Okay. Is there any specific math that anyone wants me to go over or not? Or is the basement considered livable? For the exam, no. And they wouldn't do that to you. They would just give you a floor. All right. They wouldn't give you like the whole house. Commission. Okay. I actually have a commission thing in here. Commission, where are you? Oh, operations and transfer tax, you mean? For transfers? Is that what you mean? Oh yeah, okay. All right. So let's see here. I want to give us enough time to do this Jeopardy game, but all right. So here, so when a property sells, right, the total sale price is 100%. Okay, 100% of the money that's being transferred. So now if we're getting a commission of 66%, that means the seller gets 94% minus any expenses. Right? So you know the seller has expenses. So out of the 94% is where all the expenses come from. Right? So now if we have a sale price of 225, commission rate is 6%. So then the actual commission would just be the price multiplied by the rate. And that gives you 13.5. Okay. Now, if they do the reverse to you, they tell you to calculate the sale price and they give you the commission and the rate. So what you would then do is divide the commission by the rate. And I'll show you a screen that has all of these in one slide. Okay. So you divide the commission by the rate, and that will give you the sale price. Now, here's another way you can remember. So, for example, if you're given the commission and the rate, if you do 13 times 6%, you're going to get a smaller number. That cannot be the sale price. Okay? If you do 6% divided by 13.5, that also will give you a tiny number. So that cannot be the sale price. So for me, before I learned like certain formulas and ways to do stuff like this, I would try all four. I'm like, okay, this doesn't look like the answer. And then when you divide the commission by the rate, you get a larger number. So that makes you, that's like a cue to you that that's the sale price. Okay. Then if you go down to this next one here, to calculate the rate, they will give you the commission and the sale price. Okay, so then if you're worried like, okay, which one do I divide? Remember, the rate is going to be smaller. So you may do the math in different ways to figure out which one is the right one. But in this situation, and if you notice, the commission is always on top each time. Okay. So to find the rate, we would divide the commission by the sale price. All right. Now, here it says to calculate the net to the seller. So net to the seller is what the seller gets back, right? The net to the seller, you would have the sale price, which is 100%, right? Minus whatever the commission is, or the commission rate. So 100% minus 6%, that's 94%. So the seller gets 94% of the sale price. Okay. So here's everything in one slide. And if you're familiar with the T-bar, the commission goes on the top. Then if you're finding the commission is the sale price multiplied by the commission rate. If you need to find the commission rate, it's the commission divided by the sale price. And if you need to find the sale price, it's the commission divided by the commission rate. Sorry, I think I said commission rate twice. But you get the picture, right? So commission divided by sale price gives you commission rate. Commission divided by commission rate gives you sale price. Okay. Now here's a sample question. A residence was sold the closing expenses were $526.40 plus a commission of 7%. The seller received a closing check in the amount of $37,231.60. What was the selling price? Okay. So for this one, what we're looking at here is, remember, the sale price is 100%. So we're looking for 100%. Okay. We don't know what 100% is. Okay. What we know is there was a commission of 7%. So if you go back to this slide, the net to the seller is 100% minus the commission rate. Okay. So 100 minus 7 is
93.
Okay. So 93% is this plus this. 93% is 526.40 plus 37231.60. Right? Because remember, 93% is everything else. The amount that goes to the seller plus any expenses that the seller has. Okay. So if we add these two numbers together, 0, 0, 1, 7, 8. If anyone does it before me, let me know. I forgot to do my answers, my cheat sheet. Okay, 37758. Okay, and that's 93%. All right, so if we go back to our T-bar, we know what 93% is. We have 93%. So this would be up here, 37758 over 93%. And that should give you C as in Charlie. All right. I feel like we should have just done math today because you guys have so much math questions. Prorations. Did I do prorations on here? Actually did not. Okay. So with prorations, remember there are accrued items and then there are prepaid items. So first you need to understand which one you're looking for. And then we always use 360 days for the bank year, right? 360 days. Every year has 12 months and then each month has 30 days. So even February, we would say has 30 days, right? So that's the proration part. Hold on one second. So with proration, the bank year is what we use. So we have 360 days in a year. Each year has 12 months, and then each month has 30 days. All right, so then let's say a property was closing on September 10 of this year, 22. And the taxes are 5,000, okay, that have not yet been paid. All right, so taxes are 5,000 that have not yet been paid. All right, so now we want to see if this seller is selling on September 10th, we want to calculate how much the seller should give the buyer so that when the bill comes, the buyer has that money to pay it. All right. So if we're counting from January 1st, this is per year, from January 1st to September 10, right? So we always include the actual day of closing. How many months do we have from January 1st to September 10? How many total months do we have? What would you say? Total number of months.
8.
Right. So 8 total months, right? And then 10 days. 8 and then 10 days, right? No, 10 days because it's September 10. Right, so 8 months, 10 days. So what we need to figure out is how much it is per month, and then how much the taxes are per year. Sorry, how much the taxes are per month and how much taxes are per day. So remember, we have 12 months in a year, so divide this by 12. And then whatever we get, we divide that number by 30 for our days. Okay, so 5,000 divided by 12 is 416.67 per month. All right, and then 416.67 divided by 30, $13.89 per day. Okay, so we have 8 days, 10 months. So we'll multiply here by 8. Sorry, 8 months, 10 days. All right, so 416 times 8, 1387 times 10. And then whatever we get, we add them together. Okay, so this would be 138.90 and 3,333.3. So the total is when we add both together, $3,472.23 is what the seller would have to pay at closing to the buyer. So this would be debit to the seller, credit to the buyer. Okay, and this is an accrued item. So accrued items are those that the seller has used but not paid for. Okay, so these are real estate taxes. In Illinois, we pay our taxes in arrears. So the seller is selling, but they haven't paid their taxes for 2022. So if the total taxes were $5,000, we need to figure out how many months and days they're responsible for. All right, so that's our proration. So from January 1st to September 10 is 8 total months, right? And then 10 days. So then we need to find out how much the taxes are per month and then how much the taxes are per day. So 5,000 divided by 12 gave us 416.67 per month. And then 416.67 divided by 30 gives us 1389 per day. Since we have 8 months and 10 days, we multiply the months by 8 and the day by 10. And these are the numbers we got. Then we add them together to give us the total. And if the question should ask you, how would this show up on the closing statement? That's this last part here on the screen. It's a debit to the seller and a credit to the buyer. Okay. Now, if this was a prepaid item, something the seller already paid for, but they're not going to use. They need the refund for the rest of the time. Okay, so let's even say it's the same situation. All right, give me 1 second. I'm trying to see if I can create a blank slide. I think I can do something. Okay, so let's say oops. No, okay. No, it won't let me do it. I have to, oh yeah, I'll use this one then. Okay, so let's say it's the same thing, but this is a prepaid item. Sorry guys. I don't want to end it. I want to end the slideshow just yet. Go back. No. Sorry. I need to stop sharing and then reshare. All right, so if it's the same 5,000 per year, and this is also September 10, but now this is a prepaid item. Okay, we would do the same thing, but now instead of doing from January 1st to September 10, we would do from September 11 to December 31st. Okay, so September 11 to December 31. So we have how many months? How many full months? October, November, December. So 3 full months. And then how many days? So remember, we have 30 days in a year, in a month, 30 days in a month based on this method. So 30 minus 11. And that will give you 19 days. Okay. Yeah. So from the 10th, no. This is 20 days because we're counting the 11th as well. So 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, right, till we get to 30, right? So it's 20 days. So from our previous calculations, right, we saw that the month was 416.67 and the daily was 1389. So we would go back and do the same thing here. Okay, so monthly, oh my goodness, sorry guys, I am using this tablet and it's very sensitive. Dang it. All right. So let me not use the tablet to write this last one because I can't make it not do that. All right, so 416.67 and then multiply that by 3 and then 13.89 multiply that by 20. Okay. And that will give you the prorated, the money that the buyer now has to refund the seller. All right, so 416.67 times 3 is 1250.01. And then 13.89 times 20 is 277, oh, sorry, 277.8. Sorry, this is terrible, but all right, let me try. If we add the two together, 1250.01, it gives us 1527.81. All right. Okay. I'm sorry. This was, yeah, thank you. I should just add you guys to the math for me. Okay. So I hope you were doing the math too with me, right? So we did prepaid and accrued items. So for the previous one, I told you that it would be a debit to the seller and then credit to the buyer, right? So in this situation, what would it then be on the closing statement?
Debit to the buyer, credit to the seller.
Exactly. Okay. And then for closing statements, other things that they could ask you, for example, where does the loan amount go on the closing statement? The loan amount is always a credit to the buyer because it's reducing how much the buyer has to bring to closing. Okay. So always a credit to the buyer, the loan amount. The purchase price is a credit to the seller, debit to the buyer. Because if you think about it, the seller gets to take that money home, the buyer has to bring that money to closing, right? If there's earnest money that was paid, the buyer already paid that up front, so it would count as a credit to the buyer. All right, credit to the buyer. How about, what was the other thing? Gosh, I'm forgetting. There was one other one that's always a certain way. So the loan amount for sure, the earnest money, the purchase price, and then the other things, I think the other things, they would tell you who's responsible for them. And so based on that, you know where it goes. And then remember for the prorated items, how the accrued and then prepaid, which one goes where, okay? I teach you guys with Jeopardy, but I feel like you guys wanted math. So maybe we just have to do this again at some point. So I'll just show you guys some of the formulas I put together here. So I have this one for our capitalization rate. For amortization, I know someone asked that question. I don't have an electronic copy of that table. If I do this again, I'll get one because I have the paper. I could just scan it. And that way I'll have an electronic copy and we could use that to solve for it. But it's pretty straightforward. I most likely would just do a YouTube video where I share a lot of that. So here is for your capitalization rate. Okay. So this formula pretty much works for almost everything. The part goes on the top, the whole goes on the bottom, and then the rate is also on the bottom. Okay. So let me give you guys this one to work on. And I give you the formula right there too. So let me know the answer that you get from this question. And we'll wrap it up with this for today. All right, let me know when you have an answer. Just put it in the chat. If you actually no, just wait. If you have an answer, raise your hand and then okay. So just wait a few more seconds and then Melanie, what's your answer?
I got C.
Okay. Can you walk us through what you did? Just verbally, you could just say, you know what you did to get.
So I took the gross annual income from the property and I subtracted the expenses, and then I divided it by the valuation number, the 542,325.
Yeah. Yep. That's pretty much it. Because remember, the NOI is the net operating income. So it's our gross income minus any expenses. All right. So we took, like she said, the income minus the expenses, and that gives us your net operating income. We divide that by the value, because here it's asking us to find the capitalization rate. Okay, so what's the capitalization rate? So when you divide that, and then you may have gotten 0.1075, blah, 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 right? But on some calculators, if you hit the percentage key, it would convert it to a percentage. Not every calculator does that, but some do. Or you could multiply it by 100 to get the percentage. Okay, and so C is the answer. And then the other thing too is with the cap rate, if we reduce the cap rate, which is our rate of return, we pay more for the property. And then if we increase the cap rate, we pay less for the property. All right, so if you're going to get more of a return back on your money, you want to pay less for the property. And if you want to get a lot less back, then you would, if you want to get more for the property, you pay less for it. If you get less, you pay more for it. All right, so in the chat, I put some tools that you guys can use. The candidate handbook is in there. That gives you essentially things about the exam. I also put the Illinois exam homepage where you can register for the exam and all of that in there as well. Facebook group, YouTube channel. So I'll probably do this again because I think math is a subject. And that's why I was saying, let me know what you want me to cover, because there's a lot that we could cover, right? And 2 hours is not enough to cover everything. So in the future, if you could do me a favor and just like beforehand, and then we'll make it happen, all right? So if your hands are raised, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just missed a couple. I just want to confirm that I have. We were talking about debits and credits. So we talked about earnest money paid, that's credit to buyer. For loan amount and purchase price, is it debit to seller or seller credit to buyer for loan amount?
No, purchase price is on both sides. So some things are on both sides, some things are on just one side. So purchase price is on both sides. It will be a credit to the seller. So the buyer is taking that money, so debit to the buyer, and then giving to the seller, so credit to the seller. So debit to buyer, credit to seller.
Okay, what about loan amount?
Loan amount always on one side, credit to the buyer.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Isis taking her exam next week. You do great. Just block out anything. I'm going to stop recording and probably stop sharing on YouTube, but